Shirring is having a red hot fashion moment right now, no pun intended. Now, my skin or your skin may or may not look like that, but it can certainly feel like that with certain types of shirring. So let's look at the problem of shirring in terms of itch and what we can do to solve it. I'm going to talk you through shirring, what it is, why it can sometimes be itchy burny, and also how I fixed it for some cuffs. Shirring is a method of sewing the fabric with an elastic thread and therefore it stretches. Now, it should be a really soft and kind option for everyone, but it's not. This is a lovely piece of pre-shirred fabric. You can't find this very often. I was very lucky to find it. And in this pre-shirred option, you can see the rows of elastic stitching. And what you probably can't see is that those elastic rows of stitching, the thread is coated in some kind of a material. And that means that there's very little texture here. We don't have raw rubber on your skin. And that's a problem. The front is also beautiful and soft because it's cotton. So that's what shirring should be like. But like I said, there's a problem with shirring like most things today. I had this beautiful shirt, it's perfect in all respects. You can see the beautiful shirred cuff. And what happened was that I wore it and I had to immediately get it off my wrist because they hadn't used a shirring that had a coating. It was straight rubber and it was pinching and itching my skin. So I fixed this problem and I fixed this by lining it with a really soft, beautiful, soft modal. I don't care what your level of sewing is, you can do this too. Let's have a look at how I did it. I simply used that zigzag stitch because that stretches. I'm using a jersey, so that already stretches itself. And you don't have to be neat, okay? You just need to get that lining on and cover off what is irritating you. Remember, you don't even have to finish your edge of jersey. It won't fray. And that tiny little bit of zigzag stitch will allow the cuff to still function as a stretchy, soft and kind, beautiful thing. It keeps all of those lovely gathers. And, well, you tell me, can you see it on the front? My dirty little secret of zigzagging lining? I don't think you can. Moving on to another terrible garment, but it was a great garment because the fit and the weight, it was lightweight, were perfect for me. But the wrists were shirred. In this picture, you can see how they pucker down underneath, and just that underneath has been shirred to close the wrist. And the shirring thread was raised and itchy and scratchy. Here's my garment. I got it in black last year and I really love it. Can you tell what I've done? Oh, and P.S. subscribe. You'll notice that there are two lines of stitching there at the wrist. That line of stitching is actually mine because I had to undo a lot of stuff and again put a lining in. And that's a beautiful, soft and kind lining. Now, if we turn this completely out, I've zoomed in so you can see, you'll see that there were still evidence, those lines of where the shirring thread ran. I unpicked them because my lining actually didn't cover it enough and didn't get rid of that factor because they were so raised. Different thread to the first shirt, certainly, but they were really raised, and I suspect a machine was the culprit. And here's what I've done. I've put in a lining on this side. That's what's going to touch my skin, and I have to get rid of my sensory ick, so I've made it smooth on that side that's touching my skin. And these were actually some cuffs from some joggers that I have upcycled for this perfect purpose. So step one is to see if you can get away with a lining. Step two, you might have to unpick all of it. And step three, now I've worn it for a year, I've decided that the sleeve isn't long enough, and also when I put that seam in, it might have redistributed the down feathers, and so it's a bit cold. When I tuck my hands up when I walk, which is what I want to do, I want them covered. So I today am going to make them a bit longer and a bit warmer. Now, whether you want to lengthen or whether you just want a line for sensitivity, this should give you a basic idea of how the process is and how to do it. I've chosen this fabric. It's, I think, a double knit, and it's wool, 100% wool knitted. It's going to give me that warmth factor that I need, and it's quite soft on one side. Now, this fur trim is not soft on that side at all, so I wanted it for the aesthetic reason, maybe. And my plan is to attach it so that that wool is underneath with its softest kind of side against my skin. And then the fur will just peek out over the top for decoration. That side of the wool is not going to touch me, but the underside will. I always sketch out my idea. Now I've got those Velcro squares you can see at the top and at the bottom because the fur I want, it's faux fur, I want to be able to take it off so I can wash the garment. So I'm planning to attach with Velcro, and I've got a fold back hem, and then on the right side I've marked that seam. The seam allowance will be on this side, not underneath against my skin. I do some measurements, particularly of how long extra I want to lengthen that sleeve. And then I put the measurements into that drawer up, and then I just cut it out. I cut it on the same piece of paper because it all fit, and I did put seam allowances in because my brain was fading. So the cutting out process was pretty easy. I had sufficient room in my remnant piece, which was great. I think I bought this maybe 15 years ago, and I keep my offcuts, and this is a great use of them. So 2 cuffs, cutting out 2 pieces. Voila. Side seams are very easy. I'm doing it on an overlocker. You could, of course, use a straight stitch if it wasn't stitchy in that direction on the sewing machine, or use your trusted zigzag stitch if you have a stretchy material. There we go, 2 cuffs made. We measure and pin up the hem. I had to be very exact because I'm hoping this will be an exact length to solve my coldness problem. Now I am using a decorative stitch here. You can have a look at the video. I'll link it in the top right corner where I've gone through all of the stitches available on my machine and how to find them on your machine that will work on stretchy fabric when you need things to stretch. And I'm just going all the way around. Now, I'm leaving a little gap there because I haven't decided. It did occur to me while I was sewing this, maybe I want to put some elastic in that, and that will add to the warmth too to close up the wrist. At this stage, it looks like this. We've got the decorative seam covered by the cuff, and I'm folding it back to show you where I will be attaching it. I've pinned it into place where I'm going to sew it. It is going to be sewn directly onto my inner cuff that I've already sewn to the outer garment, and that won't affect anything against my skin. The difficulty with sewing on cuffs is that it is quite a small opening. If you can get it around the arm of your sewing machine, you can take the table off and just have the arm, then it will be a lot easier. I did put my pins on back the front, so that didn't help, but still achievable. I'm just going around now with a zigzag. If you don't have an opening sufficiently large to get it over the arm, you're just going to have to stretch and open and sew, as I did for the binding on my cuff of my long-sleeved tight top. I'll chuck that video in the top right corner too. Clean up all your bits and bobs of threads. There'll be some on the inside, some on the outside. Clean them all up. And then when we unfurl this is what she's looking like. It is longer. Got my inner lining because I've got now 2 linings. And there's a bit more thread to get rid of. But as you can see, there is no seam allowance sticking into my skin, so my sensory icks are taken care of. Testing time. This is it on my arm, and do I have a successful tuck away of my fingers for warmth? I think so. However, do I want to put the fur trim on? I mean, it looks amazing, but as you can see from that picture, it's actually filling out the sleeve quite a lot underneath and it's quite tight. Again, sensory factor wise, I don't enjoy tightness and I do want to wear layers. So I have decided not to do that and to go and test drive my jacket to see how it's behaving in the super cold. This is what it's looking like. I'm successfully tucking up my fingers, as you can see. And I went and walked around the block. And as it turned out, I found I could have them down or I could turn them up again. And that even looked better, I thought. Plus, it gave me 4 times the material of that wool with extra warmth. I could still tuck my fingers up as well. So this is how I've been currently wearing it. If I decide to do anything more, I will. This is the nature of design. We test and we design. I hope you can get some extra life out of your shirred garments by taking care of the sensory factor, if there is one. Next week, we are going into some shirring, not a pre-bought shirred material, but how to do the shirring yourself. And we're going to go into a project of making a skirt with another very comfortable waistband option. See you next time and enjoy your comfy life.